In this video, we're going to check out some of the latest, greatest upgrades for your Bambu Lab X1 Carbon, P1P, or P1S. We'll check out some hardware to improve your printing experience and print quality, as well as some software and even printable tools to make operating and maintaining your printer easier and more enjoyable. So whether you already own one of these printers or you've been holding out because of some missing feature, stay tuned because boy, oh boy, do I have some exciting news for you. Let's get after it. One of the biggest criticisms of the entire Bambu Lab ecosystem has historically been that it's closed with proprietary software and hardware. But as we've explored in a couple previous videos here on this channel, that certainly hasn't stopped innovative third-party companies from developing upgrades for these printers. But it's only recently that some of the major, most respected names in the 3D printing industry have begun releasing their own products to complement these printers. And upgrade they have. Take, for example, the new hot ends becoming available for the Bambu Lab printers. At the Sanjay Mortimer RepRap Festival in Oxford, England, E3D actually unveiled to the world the first official third-party hardware collaboration with Bambu Lab in the form of their new Bambu Obsidian nozzle, a hardened and high-flow nozzle for the Bambu Lab ecosystem. Now, I'm not going to be testing that out in this video because it is not currently in stock, but let me know in the comments below if that's something that you would like to see in the future. But I actually have another good reason for not testing it in this video. You see, instead, I'm actually going to be testing out a totally different high-flow alternative for Bambu Lab printers, and one which offers the convenience of shared, quick swappable nozzles that you can actually use across all your printers. I'm talking, of course, about the all-new Panda Revo system by my friends over at Big Tree Tech and E3D. This ingenious little hot end combines E3D's newer, high-flow version of their hot end and nozzles with a custom-machined heatsink and custom connectors by Big Tree Tech to bring the convenience of the Revo ecosystem to Bambu Lab printers. Now, in the past, I had talked about the commonly available upgrade hot end that you can actually find on AliExpress, which allows you to add a CHT nozzle, or really any V6 nozzle, to your Bambu Lab printers. So how does this compare? And for that matter, how does it compare to Bambu and E3D's own collaboration that I mentioned just a second ago? Well, first off, in terms of convenience, obviously the Revo is going to win out, just based on the fact that you don't need any tools or even to remove the silicone sock. You don't even have to heat the hot end to replace your nozzles. Plus, if you're running any other 3D printers, it is really nice to be able to have one nozzle type across all of them, since these specialized mini V6 nozzles are unfortunately unique to this particular hot end. But how about performance? Well, unfortunately, due to a faulty tool head board on my X1 Carbon that Bambu is going to be replacing, I wasn't actually really able to get a proper test run done for the AliExpress setup on my X1 Carbon. Just this one that I had to restart like every few seconds. Plus, I do need to note that my pre-production version of the Panda Revo had the wrong thermistor, so I actually had to run the temps about 5% hotter in order to get the same temperatures. So all in all, you really do have to take my results with a grain of salt. My test conditions were not perfect. With all that said though, I would wager to guess that due to the significantly beefier ceramic heater block, the Revo Panda is going to outperform both the new Obsidian high flow hot end that E3D is debuting, as well as the AliExpress hot end and any hot end that uses that small chip ceramic as a heating element. I mean, it's just basic thermodynamics. And looking back on my previous flow testing that I did for a previous video, this does seem to be the case. You can see here that the Revo Panda is almost able to achieve a staggering 40 millimeters cubed per second on PLA, which is quite impressive to say the least. Now, in terms of print quality, I've noticed no significant difference in my admittedly limited testing before I was able to publish this video. One concern I do have though is that I've installed this on my P1S, which unlike the X1 Carbon, does not have automatic LiDAR flow calibration, and as you can imagine, the pressure advance and flow characteristics are going to be different when you swap out the entire hot end. Fortunately, this is something that you can manually tune in your slicer to ensure that you have sharp corners, so it's really not a big deal. Just remember to do it. Personally, it actually hasn't been enough of an issue on my few test prints to warrant spending the extra time on it. So what's my conclusion? I mean, all in all, this is a solid upgrade, but it doesn't come cheap. At $129 with one nozzle and no cooling fan, it's definitely a premium option when compared to the AliExpress version or even the Bambu E3D Obsidian. But if you like the idea of having the same nozzle type across all your printers, or you just really want to be able to swap quickly and easily with no tools, I do think it makes sense. And plus, with a whole crop of new ultra premium Revo nozzles coming out soon, like the Revo Diamondback, it might make even more sense to invest in swapping all of your printers to Revo and then investing in a small collection of really good nozzles that'll last forever. By the time you all watch this, Big Tree Tech should have the Panda Revo in stock for the X1 Carbon, P1P, and P1S. So check it out and support the channel using our link in the description. This isn't a sponsored video, but using my link does help pay for the costs of producing these videos. So check out that link in the description if you're interested. Up next, let's talk about what I think was probably the most exciting upgrade that I saw when I visited Shenzhen, and one that I'm really excited to finally be able to talk about: the Panda touchscreen by Big Tree Tech. As myself and practically every other reviewer have said in the past, the car stereo-like interface of the P1P and P1S is not great, especially after you've gotten used to the X1 Carbon. Now, this has prompted some members of the community to create open source, affordable touchscreen upgrades for the P1P and P1S. But alas, not everyone is comfortable with electronics and wiring, soldering, and programming. And in my opinion, the interface of the open source version still leaves something to be desired. So imagine my excitement when I discovered the Panda Touch, a polished, ready-made touchscreen by Big Tree Tech that mimics the look and feel of the original X1 Carbon touchscreen. But there's more, because not only is the Panda Touch wireless and battery-powered, meaning you can detach it from the magnetic base mounted on the printer or elsewhere, and then carry it around the house or print farm with you to control your printers, it also allows you to control up to 10 Bambu Lab printers at the same time. Yeah. Setting this thing up was relatively quick. You can scan your network or manually type in the details, then you need to add the access code for each printer. You set one machine as the master or main control, and you can have the others in listening only mode, or you can even set certain machines to sync control, meaning that they will do the same commands that were sent to the main machine. This feature isn't yet working on my beta firmware, but when it is ready, it could be an absolute game changer for anyone running a print farm. Overall, this screen, which by the way is going to cost less than $100, is a game changer for P1S and P1P users, in my opinion. You might recall from my P1S review that I was already cooling on the X1C being my top recommendation, relegating it to people who need to print a ton of abrasive materials, really want the touchscreen, or just have money to burn. But with this new aftermarket product, I can confidently say that in most instances, I think it'll make more sense to just save your money, buy the P1S, and use this touchscreen instead. It's not perfect, and as you can see in some of the B-roll, right now the thumbnails aren't working properly, and they're also still working on AMS support. Hopefully that's coming soon. Plus, you can't do some of the more advanced functions like maintenance, software updates, or printing from your cache in the cloud. And personally, as an avid AMS user, I definitely am missing the ability to change filament type and color right from the touchscreen. But with all that said, if you're going to be running more than one printer and deciding between a fleet of P1Ss or a fleet of X1 Carbons, which are, I'll remind you, $400 more, the savings really add up, as does the convenience of having one portable touchscreen that can control all your printers, even from across the room. I probably would even say that once this product is fully polished, I recommend buying it and a P1S over the X1 Carbon for anyone who doesn't have money to burn and doesn't mind about the little tiny things you can't do. Okay, time out, because I want to let you guys know about something else really cool to complement your 3D printers and 3D printing hobby, which I'm going to be sharing at the end of this video from my friends over at Planet Wild. Now, I don't know about all of you, but I really care about wildlife, nature, and restoring our planet's ecosystems so that all life can thrive. And sometimes I feel like this passion is at odds with my love for 3D printing, which admittedly creates a lot of plastic waste. That's why at the end of this video, I'm going to be sharing two things with you. First, an inspiring video recommendation about how everyday people like you and me are funding the restoration of forests, oceans, and other crucial wildlife habitats. And secondly, I'll be giving the first 200 of you a free month of this awesome service so that you can check it out for yourself and see if you too want to become a part of the Planet Wild community. So yeah, stick around to the end and we'll talk a little more about all that before I let you guys go. Up next, let's talk about build plates. Now, in my previous videos on Bambu Lab upgrades, I spent a lot of time, probably too much time, talking about the various different options available back then, from the AliExpress textured versions to Wham Bam's premium PEX plate and more. Since then, Bambu Lab has not only come out with their own golden textured PEI plate, but a number of other players have come out with even more interesting options. Chief among them is probably FYSETC, who offers both carbon fiber, textured, and geometric textured plates for a lot of printers. It's worth noting that these plates are double-sided, like most plates out there, but they have the benefit of offering a different texture on each side. So while Bambu's own golden PEI plate is cool, it offers the same texture on both sides. Whereas with these, you can get two different options for the price of one. Now, I've been testing out the geometric textured plate on my Voron 2.4, and while I initially thought it might be actually really gimmicky, I ended up really loving the finish and the way that prints come out looking. So for me, that one is a win and definitely worth checking out for your Bambu printers or really any printer you have. As far as the carbon fiber one though, that's not as clear-cut of a win. In my experience, bed adhesion is not nearly as good on this one as it is the other types of plates that I've tried out. And it needs to be really, really spotless and free from even a light coating of dust to adhere properly. Now that might be worth all the extra effort if it left a unique finish on my prints, but it doesn't. In all of my testing, the texturing on this plate, unlike the geometric one I mentioned before, was honestly barely noticeable at all. Personally, I would rather just have the standard textured finish. Now, as far as the textured side, these plates are fine. They're a bit different, a bit more abrasive, and a bit darker than the standard PEI sheets offered by Bambu Lab or AliExpress or a lot of other sellers that I reviewed in the past. This isn't good or bad, it just is, and is worth noting. These plates are marketed as not being compatible with the X1C's LiDAR, and as such, they don't include the plate recognition QR code on there, but from experience, I can tell you that if you just add on the QR code by simply printing it on a label printer or even a piece of paper and then gluing it on there, and then select textured PEI plate in your slicer, your X1 Carbon will still print just fine with these types of plates, so don't believe all the fear-mongering out there. Occasionally, you might get an error about filament refraction or something like that, but your prints will turn out just fine. In conclusion, what can I say? These print surfaces are significantly cheaper than the originals from Bambu Lab in percentage point terms, and they offer more variety, both in terms of having different textures on each side and in terms of the range of texture options available. There is even a smooth PEI version that has come out since I began testing all these plates, which I guess would compete with Wham Bam's smooth PEX plate. Besides the carbon fiber one, I've been impressed with these plates, and if you don't mind printing and gluing on a QR code for yourself, at least for the X1 Carbon users, I think that they're a great value for what you pay. Scrolling through AliExpress recently in preparation for this video, I happened upon this upgrade fan shroud for the X1 and P1 series printers. To be honest, if there's one thing that I've really never had an issue with on my Bambu printers, it has to be cooling. I mean, after all of my printers have the massive auxiliary fan on there. However, for the benefit of science and for all of you, I clicked on order and I decided to try it out. The first thing I'll note about this shroud is the quality. It's 3D printed using PA12 nylon sintering on an industrial 3D printer, which is super nice. As you can see, it features 3 air outlets instead of 2, though, of course, after I ordered this one, someone came out with an even fancier version that wraps all the way around. Installing it is a little trickier than you'd think because although there are 4 screws to remove the stock one and then 2 screws to install the new one plus pre-installed magnets, it seems that Bambu Lab glues or fuses the stock cowl on and you have to break it a little bit at one of the pins to remove it. By the way, if you appreciate me sacrificing my printers so you guys don't have to, I would really appreciate if you took a second to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. We actually do have a huge 100K subscriber giveaway event planned where we're going to be giving away a Voron and dozens of exciting upgrades, kilos and kilos of filament, much more. But we first have to actually hit 100K, so you know what to do. Back to this aftermarket Shroud. Does it actually make a difference? Well, to find out, I ran a series of tests. First, to mimic the performance of a P1P, I removed the top cover, opened the door, and then disabled the auxiliary fan, since those printers don't come with one. Of course, it's not the same as having a fully open P1P with airflow from every direction, but sorry, I'm not disassembling an entire printer to test a $7 part from AliExpress. I then ran a 4-directional overhead test with otherwise standard PLA cooling settings and a 0.6mm high-flow Revo nozzles. All tests were done using Cancellation PLA, which is very high quality. I then repeated this test in every possible variation. The stock cowl with the standard auxiliary fan settings, the aftermarket cowl and no auxiliary fan, and finally the aftermarket cowl, standard auxiliary fan settings, and without aftermarket. You get the idea. Throughout all of these tests, I kept the door open and the top cover removed under the assumption that if you're needing a lot of cooling, you're probably not printing ABS, nylon, or ASA, but rather PLA. Here are the results. With a stock cowl and no auxiliary fan, i.e. the P1P simulation, every single test would get blobby and detach from the build plate at around 50 or 55 degrees overhang. I added a brim, which increased it to around 60 or 65, but overhangs really started looking bad at around 50 all around. With the stock setup and the auxiliary fan running at the default 70%, I still had detachment issues, but things obviously looked cleaner, and the version with a large brim was able to reach 55 or 60 on some of the sides that benefited from the auxiliary fan. Now, I really didn't expect to see much improvement from there on. After all, 60-degree overhangs are pretty impressive from my experience and are already enough to make me question how much I actually use supports on these printers. But on the first test of the upgraded setup, the aftermarket cowl, which featured no auxiliary fan, I actually experienced the first completed print with no detachment from the bed. There seemed to be a little bit of wonkiness at the bottom of the print, and it really didn't look all that good quality-wise, even at the very bottom. But on some sides, overhangs reached as high as 65 degrees. Frankly, just the fact that the print finished without getting stuck was very impressive, but I had to do some more testing to see if the print quality was a fluke or not. So on the final version, with the upgraded cowl and the auxiliary fan running, the print actually failed earlier than on any other of my tests, and the second try failed again at 50 degrees. The cooling up until that point was actually quite good, as was the print quality, but I expected better performance going higher up. It's really hard to draw a conclusion from these results. I think I need to do a lot more testing with actual real-life models, not just overhangs, but for now, I would say that although this is a really affordable upgrade, I don't know if I'd recommend messing with your stock setup unless you're running a P1P without the auxiliary fan and you really need all the extra cooling that you can get. That was the only instance in my testing where the aftermarket cowl really performed nicely and made a bigger difference, though honestly it would probably just be better to get the official Bambu Lab auxiliary fan, which is an optional add-on if you want more cooling. Up next, let's talk about those LED strips that you can find on AliExpress for improving the lighting inside your printer. They come ready wired with a quick connector to plug right into the inside of the printer, as well as the standard self-adhesive backing on all LED strips, all for the low price of like $3. Unfortunately, as you may know, there isn't really a lip or a ledge inside of these printers to install these LED strips. So if you want to use them and you want it pointing on your print, then you're going to need to print one of a myriad of different risers for the lid of your printer. assuming you have one, which will then create an angled lip, which you can install the LED strip. Personally, my printers are already very close to the tops of my shelves, and I don't really want to have to deal with rattling plastic risers. Plus, at Smurf, I saw the new magnetically attached LED strip that Big Tree Tech has been working on, so yeah, knowing that that's coming, I'm not installing this garbage on any of my printers. Sorry. So that's all the hardware upgrades, but what about software? Well, as it turns out, while I was working on this video, Bambu Lab actually released an exciting firmware upgrade for the X1 Carbon that I want to make sure you all know about. This new version takes advantage of the same advanced active motor noise cancellation that Bambu Lab debuted with the A1 Mini, applying it to the much older and louder X1 Carbon. To activate it, all you need to do is upgrade to the latest firmware using the smartphone app or the touchscreen interface. Then navigate to the Settings menu, Utilities, Calibration. You'll notice a new check mark for motor noise cancellation. Go through that process. Your machine will go through a bunch of different calibration steps for about 10 minutes, and once it's done, you'll find that the overall noise of the machine is reduced by about 5 decibels with the door closed. Now, if they could just find a way to reduce that deafening noise of the chamber fan without me needing to upgrade it to a Noctua. A guy can dream, right? Last, but definitely not least, I do want to share with you all this one little amazing print that I found on Printables. I don't know about you, but I seriously procrastinate and slack when it comes to maintaining my Bambu printers. And part of the reason for that is that it's a genuine pain in the butt to clean those tiny little threads on each of the lead screws, especially the one in the back. This in turn means that every time I reach into my printer, I am immediately branded as a Bambu Lab user with the telltale mark of shame. No more. The rod sloth is an ingenious little design that latches on to each one of the lead screws with a perfectly precise matched threading. So when you latch it on with the towel in between, it shoves the fibers of the towels deep into the crevasses of the lead screw. From there, you simply need to move the bed up and down, and the rod sloth will work its way up and down on its own, cleaning out the gunk in the process. You do this 3 times, 1 for each lead screw, and then lube to your satisfaction. It even works on your other printers as long as they use the same size lead screw. Now, this was just too cool to share, even if it's not really an upgrade, so if you enjoy it, make sure to give the designer a like on Printables. So there you have it, half a dozen or so hardware, software, and printable upgrades for your Bambu Lab printers to improve your printing experience, your quality, and more. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video, and maybe you got some great ideas for some upgrades that you can install on your own printers. But hang on, before I let you go, I promised you guys 2 things if you stuck around to the end, both courtesy of my friends over at Planet Wild. In case you're wondering, Planet Wild is a nature protection organization that funds ecosystem restoration to preserve wildlife. Who doesn't love that? Planet Wild is a community of individuals like you and I who give back to nature where it's needed most by bringing back endangered species, cleaning up our oceans, and reviving forests. Best of all, they document everything for you and I to follow along, both in their monthly video reports and on their YouTube channel. Now, I have to admit, I was really excited to learn about this membership because I actually use a similar monthly subscription service for carbon capture to offset my carbon footprint from flying and 3D printing and all that kind of stuff. But I've never been able to find one where I can directly support rewilding and restoring natural habitats, which, if I'm honest, as a lifelong lover of nature and wildlife, I'm even more passionate about that. Basically, for as little as $6 a month, you can vote on which projects you'd like to see achieved and then follow along as Planet Wild works directly with the experts to actually rewild, restore, and revive real habitats and ecosystems. Plus, if you use the code THENEXTLAYER at checkout or use the QR code appearing on screen, you'll get your first month free for the first 200 subscribers to join through my link or through this QR code. So that's one of the things I promised. Second, I want to encourage you to just check out some of Planet Wild's own YouTube videos, which are popping up on the screen right now, just to get to know them and see some of their amazing work so that you can see if you too want to support it. On their latest mission, they're actually protecting farmers' crops and saving the African savanna elephant in Tanzania with the help of the small but mighty honeybee. Really cool stuff. Oh, and one last thing. I know there's been a lot of last things, but before I let you go, I do need to also thank my Patreon and YouTube members for their support and give a special and wonderful heartfelt thanks to our Nylon and Peak members, Chip Cox, Two Crazy Ketos, Amir Hen, and Chris Miller. You guys rock, and I've already put some of you up on the wall in the other studio. So thank you for your support. That's all for this week, but I'll see all of you on the next layer.